The night I finally broke down, there was no one to call. And the painful part was that my phone had never been busier. I was 27 years old and I had spent the better part of 3 years being the person everyone leaned on. The one who picked up at midnight. The one who remembered what you were worried about 2 weeks ago and checked in without being asked. The one who sat with your pain like it was my own, sometimes more than my own, because at least yours felt manageable to carry. Mine I just kept setting down somewhere and walking away from. I want to tell you something before I go any further. I am not sharing this because I want sympathy. I am sharing this because I think there are people listening right now who are doing exactly what I was doing and have no idea how close to empty they actually are. My name is Maya, and I was everyone's person. Until the night I realized I had no one. It started the way these things always do. Gradually and quietly, so quietly you don't notice until you're already deep inside it. I had 3 people in my life who I would call my closest circle. Sam was 29, my friend since college, warm and funny but carrying a lot of anxiety that spilled into our friendship constantly. Ryan was 28, someone I had known through work who had gone through a rough breakup and had leaned on me almost daily for nearly a year. And Emma was 25, my younger cousin who was navigating her first real heartbreak and had decided, without saying it out loud, that I was the person she would process everything with. I loved all 3 of them. I want to be clear about that. I genuinely did, but love, I learned slowly, can be given in ways that cost you more than you realize. Sam would call and I would listen for an hour. Ryan would message late at night and I would stay up responding, even when I had work early the next morning. Emma would show up at my door sometimes unannounced, and I would make tea and sit with her for hours. I never once said it was too much. I never once said I was tired. Because honestly, in some strange way, being needed felt like purpose. And I had confused purpose with fulfillment for a very long time. But then something shifted, and it happened so quietly I almost missed it. There was a week, about 8 months into this pattern, where things in my own life started to fall apart. Not dramatically, just the slow crumbling kind that nobody notices from the outside. I had received difficult news from a doctor about something that needed further testing. Nothing confirmed yet, but the kind of news that sits in your chest and makes everything feel slightly unreal. I was also struggling at work, dealing with a manager who had taken a disliking to me for reasons I couldn't fully understand, and it was affecting my confidence in ways I couldn't shake. I needed to talk. For the first time in a long time I genuinely needed someone to just sit with me. So I reached out to Sam first. She was in the middle of something and said she would call me back. She didn't. I reached out to Ryan. He responded hours later with a quick message asking if we could talk tomorrow because he was having a hard day. I said of course. He never brought it up again. I messaged Emma. She replied with a voice note that was mostly about something difficult she was going through herself, and ended with a quick, "Hope you're okay though," before the message cut off. I sat in my apartment that evening and stared at my phone and felt something I did not expect to feel. Not anger, not even sadness exactly, just a hollow, quiet recognition that I had built something that only moved in one direction. I had created a version of myself that was so consistently available, so reliably okay, that nobody had thought to check if I actually was. And I couldn't even blame them entirely, because I had never given them a reason to think otherwise. Every time someone asked how I was doing, I gave them the short version. The manageable version, the fine version. I had trained the people around me to believe that I didn't need what they needed. What happened next surprised me, and not in a way I expected. I cried that night, properly cried, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and takes a while to stop. And while I was sitting there in that feeling, something became very clear to me. I had spent years holding space for other people's pain without ever learning how to hold space for my own. I had become so fluent in everyone else's emotional language that I had forgotten I had one too. The week after that was strange. I went through the motions. I still replied to Sam when she eventually called. I still checked on Ryan. I still answered Emma, but something inside me had changed its position, even if nothing on the outside looked different yet. I started paying attention to the pattern in a way I hadn't allowed myself to before. I noticed that conversations with Sam almost always circled back to Sam. I noticed that Ryan reached out most when he needed something and went quiet when things were good in his life. I noticed that Emma's messages almost always began with her own situation, with a small question about me tucked in at the end like an afterthought. None of this made them bad people. I want to say that clearly and honestly. People move toward comfort. People lean on what holds them. That is human. That is natural. The problem was not them. The problem was that I had never shown them where my edges were. I had never let them see that I had a limit. And so they never knew to look for it. I think a lot of people listening to this know exactly what I am talking about. Have you ever felt like the moment you stop being strong, you become a burden? Like your job in every relationship is to be the stable one and wanting support somehow makes you less of who you are. If that feels familiar, I need you to stay with this story a little longer. About 2 months after that night, I did something I had never done before. It felt small from the outside but it was enormous for me. Sam called. She was upset about something at work and started telling me about it. And after a few minutes, instead of just listening, I said something honest. I told her that I wanted to hear what she was going through but that I also needed to share something with her first. And I told her about the doctor's news. The real version, not the managed version. There was a pause, and then she said, "Maya, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I didn't have a clean answer for her. Because the real answer was complicated. The real answer was that I had built a role for myself where telling people felt out of character. Where needing felt like a kind of failure. But what happened next was something I genuinely didn't expect. Sam stayed on the phone with me for 2 hours that night. She didn't try to fix anything. She just listened, and at the end she said something simple. She said she hadn't realized how much I had been carrying because I never showed it. That sentence stayed with me for weeks. I hadn't shown it. That was not their failure. That was mine. Or not a failure exactly, but a choice I had been making without realizing it was a choice. I had decided somewhere along the way that being needed was safer than being vulnerable. That giving was less risky than asking. That if I held everyone else up, I would never have to face the possibility of reaching out and finding nothing there. But what I had actually created was exactly that. A life where I was surrounded by people who cared about me in the way I had allowed them to, which was not fully. Not really. Things shifted after that conversation with Sam. Slowly, the way real things shift. I started being more honest about my capacity. When Ryan messaged late one night and I was exhausted, I said I was tired and we could talk tomorrow. And we did, and it was fine. When Emma arrived at my door, I started sometimes saying I had 30 minutes instead of giving the whole evening. And the world did not end. The friendships did not collapse. They just became more honest. I also started something that felt uncomfortable at first but became one of the most important things I have ever done for myself. I started paying attention to what I actually needed on a given day and asking myself if I was getting any of it. Not in a selfish way, just in the way that you would check if a plant had water. Basic care, basic attention turned inward. I realized I had been so focused on being a soft place for everyone else to land that I had never built one for myself. There is a version of kindness that comes from genuine fullness. You give because you have enough and want to share it. And then there is a version that comes from fear. You give because you are afraid of what happens if you stop. Afraid of being seen as unavailable. Afraid of losing the one thing that makes you feel valuable. I had been living in that second version for years without knowing it. I am 29 now. 2 years have passed since that night I sat alone with my phone and felt that hollow recognition. My friendships look different now. Not worse, actually better, because they are more real. Sam and I talk differently. There is more honesty in it. Ryan and I drifted a little, and I have made peace with that. Some connections are built for a season and that is okay. Emma and I are closer than ever, partly because I stopped pretending I was endlessly fine and she started seeing me as a full person instead of just a steady resource. And me, I am still someone who shows up for people. That has not changed. I don't think it ever will. It is genuinely part of who I am. But I show up differently now. With limits I can actually name. With honesty about when I am running low. With the understanding that taking care of myself is not a betrayal of the people I love. It is actually what makes it possible to love them well. If you are the person in your circle who always holds everyone else together, I want to ask you something directly. When was the last time someone held you? When was the last time you let them? You are allowed to need things. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to say that today you don't have enough to give. That is not weakness. That is the most honest kind of strength there is. Leave a comment below and tell me if this story felt familiar. Tell me if you have ever been the strong one for so long that you forgot you were allowed to not be. Your words matter here, and so do you. If this story reached something in you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Like this video and subscribe to Untold Perspectives for more stories that feel real, because every single one of them is.